is up, y'all? It's me, Tasha C, and welcome to the Tasha C Show podcast. Shout out to my YouTube and podcast fam. If you're part of my YouTube fam, go ahead, and you can also go into the podcast fam. If you don't like what you hear, you're part of it, you about to be part of my YouTube fam, but you like podcasts, go ahead and look in the description and speaker, and it shows below the other places where you can find my podcast and listen and follow me from there. And vice versa to the podcast folks. Same thing. If you about, been, following me or, like what you're listening to, then you go right ahead and be like, you can go ahead and ask me, well, what YouTube channel you talking about? Well, let me tell you. Tasha C TV. Don't forget the TV part. So anyways, y'all, I just wanted to tell y'all this podcast I decided to do another limited series that I'm going to do for over the remaining amount of the 29 days. Shout out to, got making a bonus leap year with an extra bonus day. So anyways, so I just basically, y'all, if y'all first time listening, this is called, of course, in the title, our kings and queens next door, which basically I'm just reading off like such things for certain websites and Instagram things where I talk about different moments in Black history, not just African American history, but certain other areas too. But just let y'all know in advance, due to the fact that I use a podcast app. Y'all may hear such items as, well, maybe the clock, because, I wanted to make sure I stay up. So I just decided to come limited in the reclining chair at the moment. And so you may hear a clock at the most or notifications and so forth. So like I said, due to the fact I usually have these run about 20 minutes as opposed to the longer podcasts, if y'all want to listen to those as well. I want to be able to first talk about, let me give it a second here, because it's always, facts to celebrate Black History Month. We're going to go first to the website this time. Yesterday I did Instagram. I found an Instagram page called Black History and a couple other ones. And if I have time, like I said, I'll go to that one. Okay, this one is called 15 Facts You Didn't Know About Black History Month. Now, I'm not going to go through everything, but I will say with this, okay? The man with the plan, historian Carter G. Wilson, was the creator of what we presently know as Black History Month. Worked passionately to establish the event in effort to provide an education on the origins, struggles, and achievements of African Americans in the United States history. Originally, it existed as 7 days of the commemoration, first established in 1926 and called Negro History Week. Woodson penned more than a dozen books, including 1933's Mission Education of the Negro. Learn true about some of the historic figures that you've been picturing wrong. On February 2019, the National Association for Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, will celebrate their 110th birthday. The date of February 12th, 1909 was chosen for the NAACP's inception because it also marked the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. It's America's oldest civil rights organization as well as its largest. Okay, and that's another story because actually it's Juneteenth. Okay, you know what? I'm going to leave it alone because that's there. Okay. Black. Okay, let's go here. If you have been pressed on to find much diversity in old-time Western films, however, according to the Smithsonian magazine, 1 out of 4 cowboys was blacks. In fact, it's believed that the fictional character of the Lone Ranger was based on Bass Reeves. And that's one that shows my dad. My dad actually loves cowboy movies, movies and shows and stuff like that. And, none of them, of course, have a cat, because I've seen enough of them. They got a whole cable, actually a cable show that is dedicated, I think it's Stars Western, that's dedicated alone just to different shows or movies that is supposed to be, cowboy western movies, okay? Okay, Reeves was born into slavery, but he fled westward during the Civil War. In time, Reeves became a deputy U.S. Sorry about that, y'all. It was something loaded up. I was like, oh, please don't mess up my podcast, and I have to start over again. Okay, anyway, Reeves was born into slavery, but he fled westward during the Civil War. In time, Reeves became a deputy U.S. Marshal. Okay, I already talked about this, about Maya Angelou and Unfortunately, Martin Luther King was assassinated on her birthday. They were actually good friends. I'm actually going to go more detailed, a more thorough book about this, about Betty Boo, which actually I want to tell you, that was, that's one of my favorite kind of. Betty Boo was inspired by Black Jack Sr. But like I said, I'll just go real quick with here, but I will talk about her more. She may have been drawn as a Hollywood pinup girl, but cartoon Betty Boo was actually based on Esther Jones, a Harlem-based jazz singer. Jones was known for her use of boobs in her songs, as well as what is called childlike scat, similar to that of her illustrating counterpart. Okay. A slave by the name of Obstinance, I said this before, but it's very important, brought to the Massachusetts colonies, was told the church minister Conrad about the way ejaculations were practiced in Africa for centuries to prevent people from getting sick. Matt took his information to Dr. Isabel Boston when the smallpox became a severe issue in Boston in 1721, reports PBS. Boston's occupied 240 people despite a large opposition to practice. According to the United States Census Bureau, the black population in the U.S. Includes 46.8 million people. This is either alone in a combination with or more races. A 2018 report asserts that there are 2.1 million black military veterans across the U.S. In 2015, the Bureau counted 13,643,000 black-owned businesses nationwide. Many years before Colin Kirkpatrick took a knee during the national anthem, two other athletes sent a powerful message about their unity with Black America. During the 1968 Olympic Games, Mexico City competitors Tommy Smith and John. Okay, I wanted to make sure I got this. I'm not repeating this again, this first part. During the 1968 Olympic Games in Mexico City, competitors Tommy Smith and John Carlos wore black gloves and gave a salute during the anthem. In the United States and Canada, we celebrate Black History in February. However, in the United Kingdom, Ireland, and the Netherlands, they honor it during the month of October. In 2014, Ireland became the only fourth country in the world to celebrate Black History Month. Ain't that something, y'all? Considering Abraham Lincoln hailed from Illinois and was the president who would eventually abolish slavery, you might expect that the first state to do away with the practice was his Midwestern state of origin. However, it was Vermont that led away in 1777. Okay. That wasn't all. Just give me a second, y'all. I first thought all this stuff was on the page. Ain't gonna lie, be hard. They got it as like a slide. So I'm waiting for the second page to load up. And then I'll be in my next thing. Okay. Quincy Jones, his history books as the most nominated artist in Grammy history. He scored a total of 79 nominations and 27 awards. Not surprisingly, he was presented with the Grammy Legend Award back in 1992. Jones is also one of the founders of the Institute for Black American Music. Paving the way for women of color in Congress was Sherry Kunzman, who represented New York in the House of Representatives. Just 4 years ago, after she entered the House in 1972, she became the first black candidate for a major party nomination in the race for President of the United States. Way back in 1664, marriage between witches was banned in the United States. This law was first intact in the colony of Maryland, with others quickly following suit. It seems unbelievable in our modern-day society that this took more than 300 years to overturn. On April 15, 1947, Jackie Robinson played his first game as one of the Brooklyn Dodgers. During his first season in the major leagues, he led the National League with the most stolen bases and was then honored as the Rookie of the Year. Despite his talent, still Robinson faced adversity from fans and colleagues. He later became an outspoken member of the Civil Rights Movement for Black Equality. Before there was a Rose Park fighting desegregation on the Montgomery and Ballard Bunts, there was Claudette Carvin. At just 15 years old, she stayed seated and refused to move to the back of the bus. I actually had talked about this in the first one I had, but let's continue. According to PBS, Colvin had previously learned about the plight of Harriet Tubman and early activists. It's believed she said it felt like Shona Truth was on one side pushing me down, and Harriet Tubman was on the other side pushing me down. I couldn't get up. Couldn't get up. And next, if I don't, couldn't get up. So the next part I was starting to read over, they're talking about link to something else. So that's with that one. Let me check the time here. Okay. Okay, this is another one. I'm not going to go through this, but 19 facts you might not know about history as well. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of them because one we already talked about. Okay, for example, Phyllis Wheatley was only 12 when she became the first female author published. I never knew that. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to take this thing off of here so it does not load. Okay, it was like a little advertisement. The reason why I was pausing so much is when you do these podcasts, like say through a phone app, and some media comes up and tries to load, such as, whether it's music or song or movie, whatever. Music, song, same thing. What am I talking about? Maybe say music or video. It will stop the podcast. Okay, let me go back to finishing this first paragraph. Despite Phyllis Wheatley's fame, we know surprisingly little about her early life. She was taken from her home in Africa when she was 7 or 8 and sold to the Wheatley family in Boston. The family taught her to read and write and encouraged her to write poetry as soon as they witnessed her talent for it. In 1773, Phyllis published her first poem, making her the first African American to be published. She was only 12 years old at the time. Her work was praised by highly ranking members of society, including perhaps notably George Washington. Her writing made her famous throughout the colonies. Not long after her poems were first published, the family that owned Wheatley emancipated her. Okay, for unfortunately, her life took a turn from there, especially after the deaths of many of Wheatley's who had helped supported her. She was stricken in poverty. The fame she earned from her writing did little to sustain her for her and her children. She fell ill and died at the age of 31. Oh my goodness. Okay, this was the improv, but let me see what I say. Okay, let's go to number 3. We're skipping that because, like I said, it's on the second one. Hattie McDaniel, the first African American to win an Oscar was. Oh, okay, it's not moving. Okay, I was going to say, oh my gosh, because I don't want to point in it plays for real. Hattie McDaniel, the first African American to win an Oscar, wasn't allowed to attend Golden Wind's national premiere. Hattie McDaniel was able to carve out a place for herself in Hollywood despite rampant racism and a co-assignment to bit parts. She paved the way for many African American women, but not without her fair share of obstacles. Her first performance as quote Mammy, unfortunately, in the Gone with the Wind, 1939, won her Best Supporting Actress at the Oscars that year. However, the national movie premiere was in Atlanta. Because of Georgia's Jim Crow laws, she was prohibited from attending the event. Harry went on to star in over 300 films, which was inducted into the Black Filmmakers Hall of Fame in 2006, and was the first Oscar winner to appear on a poster set. Besides her ultimate success, her choices, insofar as she had any, in her roles were often criticized. The NAACP said Hollywood's roles for African Americans were narrow to servants or characters whose main purpose was to be comically slow and dim-witted. Hattie was criticized for settling for lesser roles than her white colleagues. Despite this, Hattie went on to have a stellar career. Okay, this was also before, even though I talked about it before, I felt it was important again. Talking about Josephine was a spy for the Spanish during World War II. Josephine Baker was one of the showbiz's most iconic performers left the United States due to the over racism she encountered in 1937. After marrying a Frenchman, John Lyon, she moved to Paris and renounced her U.S. citizenship. In 1940, when the Nazis began their occupation of Paris, Baker showed how deep she was to loyalty to her adopted nation was, becoming a spy for the Allies. During her travel to Europe to perform paper with concealed messages when their costumes or her sheet music for Allied spies. She also used her status as desired society presence to eavesdrop at various embassy events and balls. Okay. The ban on the interracial marriage in the U.S. was overturned because of one couple in 1967. They made a movie based on this as well. I haven't seen it, but it was just something. Okay, Miss Midger and Richard Loving left their home state of Virginia to get married. They were warned by Virginia state officials that getting married would be a violation of state law, as Richard was white and Midger was not. When they returned home, Midger was promptly arrested. When she was finally released, the couple was referred to the American Civil Liberties Union by Robert Kennedy. The ACLU, seeing the opportunity to end anti-miscegenation laws, jumped at the chance. After making its way through a local and state courts, Loving versus Virginia was put before the Supreme Court, and the bans on the interracial marriage were deemed unconstitutional. It was a landmark victory for couples of different races, and the Lovings are often heralded as being the catalyst for making it happen. The last law formally prohibiting interracial marriage was overturned in Alabama in 2000. The Lovings were featured in a 2016 biopic, Loving, starring Ruth Negger and Joel Erton. Okay. This again was talking about number 6 was Martin Luther King that was assassinated Maya Angelou's 40th birthday. So I don't want to talk about. 9 months before, the young woman was named Claudia Carver. We just talked about it again. And the last thing. Okay. All right. Here we go with number 8. Like I said, I skipped a couple because I just had said them before, or at least, talked about a little bit more depth with, like a second article. Okay. Anna Murphy was the first African American woman to be ordained as the Episcopal priest. Yeah, not the first African woman with women. Okay, this firewall exchanged letters with both Eleanor and Franklin Roosevelt for many years and was considered Eleanor's dear friends. Although her work has been sadly faded from view, Mary's expertise in law was a very part of the civil rights movement. She worked closely with icons like Thurgood Marshall and Rosa Parks, and was appointed by President Kennedy to the Presidential Commission on the Status of Women in the 1960s, where her work focuses on Jane Crow, how discrimination against black people particularly and deeply affected black women, and their ways where sexism and racism combined to affect black women. Murray died of cancer in 1985. In the last decade or so, her work had been brought to light through various efforts, including making her childhood home a National Historic Landmark, and blockbuster through biography of Maury and Eleanor Rose as the firebrand and the First Lady. Matthew Henson was a key member of the first successful expedition of Poe and made separate articles. I had talked about this before, so okay. And Malik A.J. Walker, I also talked about her before a couple times. Okay. I think I talked before, but look, it's a little more information. Billie Holiday's famous Strange Fruit was originally a poem written by a school teacher. In 1936, Louis published an anti-lynching poem called Strange Fruit in the Teacher's Union magazine. Louis was a phenomenon for Abel Merpool, a Jewish school teacher from the Bronx. At the height of American lynchings, there was as many as 1,953 people killed by lynching a year. During the 1800s and 1900s, lynching had hit a peak, encouraged by the Jim Crow era, Reconstruction, and the Great Migration of black Southern workers to northern cities. Maripool eventually set the poem to music. A few younger artists had picked up the song before, but it was Holiday already made it famous. She sang and recorded a version in 1939 that was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. Holiday and Murder were both met high praise. Strange Fruit was one of the most iconic songs of the civil rights movement and retains its power to its day. Oh, heck no. Ooh, thank you, Jesus, y'all. I had to pause again because I was able to get out from, I wanted to at least finish one more statement, or at least not be cut off. I was trying to get a notification out the way. And, okay, Tibia E. Butler was Alexis. I already had said this before. Okay, Benjamin Banker taught himself astronomy, man, becoming the first known African man of science. I talked about this, but let's go again. Some more details. Benjamin Baker was born a free man in 1731. He lived in Maryland with his mother, a free African-American woman, and his father, a former slave. While researchers believe young Benjamin spent quiet time attending Quaker school, he had little alternative for an education. So the young man taught himself and soon revealed his brilliant mind. Flexing his ability to calculate positions of objects and regular intervals, Baker began publishing acclimates from 1792 through 1797. Each issue included Baker's astronomical calculations, weather predictions, and tide tables, as well as poetry and writing, literature, medicine, and politics. A digital scan of Baker's almanac from 1793 can also be found here. There's a link to hyperlink to something of that. Baker's scholarly pursuits led his correspondence with Thomas Jefferson. In a letter in 1791, Baker respectfully challenged then the Secretary of State's view on slavery and the intellectual capability of black people. Jefferson responded, and Baker later published their correspondence. 1790 also saw Baker join a survey team tasked with establishing the boundaries of the nation's capital. However, given the lack of historical documents, the exact nature of Baker's participation is difficult to discern. Okay, I talked about Shirley Crimson as well, so a couple times. Okay, this is the last. I think it's a 19. I think I'm going to end here. There's a couple more, but I'm going to end this for today, y'all, because the go ahead, and then we'll finish off the rest of those in the remaining 5 days of this series. Excuse me, y'all. It's almost 3 o'clock in the morning. But anyways, y'all, hugs and loves. I hope y'all enjoy y'all weekend. I will see y'all in the next podcast of this limited series. Hug and loves, and take care.